Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Our class this morning is the story of Ananda. It's a very, very big story because it includes all of us. It includes people all over the world who are aspiring for something higher and who want to put their hearts into it and dedicate their lives to it. So this morning we have the honor of talking a little bit about that. My name is Anandi. I moved here in 1971, and I was, in the early years, I worked in our garden and our candy business, and soon after that began working in outreach to the public through our meditation retreat and through our publications, and I'm still doing both of those today, working at the Expanding Light and as an editor for Crystal Clarity Publishers. Thank you. So on Tuesday, Devi and Jyotish talked about the principles of Ananda's success, and they spoke very inspiringly and eloquently. And our goal this morning is to fill in around that by sharing personal experiences and stories to help round out the picture of the story of Ananda. When Devi asked me to be on this panel, she said her reason for doing it was she said, "You were there." And so I was, actually. But as I was meditating on what it was like to be there, I realized how little there I really was and how little I comprehended what was going on. And as Jyotish mentioned, very few of us did. And at yesterday's panel, listening to Bharat and Dharmadas, I understood that on a deeper level, and I want to share it with you because it's been very inspiring to me to think about this. They were talking about being contractive versus expansive, and I was meditating more on what that meant in terms of Ananda and being here and so forth. And I realized that for most of us, the center of our life is ourself. What we want, our work, of course, our service to God, our meditation, our needs, our desires, our preferences, all these things. Life kind of revolves around this central pole of ourself, and to that extent, our life is circumscribed and contractive. And then to contrast that to Swami, who I don't know at what phase this happened, but it was certainly happening at the beginning of Ananda. Swami is not circumscribed by himself at all. He's not the center of his life. He's sort of a bit player on the side. He, as Jyotish said, has described Kriyananda as an event for which he's responsible. So instead of life revolving around himself, instead, his life has been about attunement to an avatar who is omnipresent, omniscient, and through attunement, that's where his consciousness is moving. So that it's a very, very big picture. And it encompasses all of life and all of the opportunities for serving and for aspiration and for moving forward in God and toward loving every person and seeing the God in every person. And Kriyananda is kind of just there on the side, and he buys shoes for him if that's needed, or feeds him, or whatever is needed, but it's not the focus. The focus is Master's light. And what he's saying to us is this can be your life. You don't have to have yourself as the center. As Master said, people make such a big mistake of thinking that things that are happening to them are happening to them personally. That it's a very, very big picture. So Ananda is offering us really a boundless opportunity to attune to that very, very big picture through our meditation, through our service, and through trying to attune to the Master's consciousness. I wanted to speak a little bit this morning about one of the first things that struck me when I came to Ananda, and I say it because it strikes most people when they come to Ananda, and that is the people that they meet. When I came here, I didn't even meet Swami for several days. I was meeting other people, and I was quite struck by the people that I was meeting. And so I was, again, having the opportunity to give a class like this. You just get to sit and reflect and look back and think, what was happening? Who were those people? What was it? And there were a number of things. And one of them was, of course, joy. And that joy comes from finding happiness inside ourselves through meditation and through these teachings and practices and living them. But what that does is it also makes us so accepting of other people. Because, well, I came to Ananda via Berkeley, a short spell in Berkeley at the time of encounter groups, which were a very unpleasant way of relating to people. And the idea was that you needed to be how I think you should be. And if you aren't how I think you should be, then you need to change. And when people feel complete in themselves because they're meditating and they feel happy in themselves when they're meditating, they can really just take delight in the variety of humanity and not try to control it in any way. We had, Bharat and I did the training program for new members here for many years, and I remember one woman coming here out of college, and she looked around her group of about 15 people, and there were people who were decades older than she was, and had come from such a wide variety of backgrounds, people that she couldn't relate to in any way whatsoever in terms of her past. She was just looking around knowing that we had a month together and just thinking, how is this going to work? But what she found, and what we find throughout the whole community and through decades of community, is the wide variety of people are all joined together. And because of this unity of connection with spirit, harmony flows. I was thinking of relationships at Ananda and what struck me in the beginning, and I was trying to meditate on the feeling of it and what did I sense. And the image that came to me was a cell phone. And Trimurti explained to me how a cell phone works, and I'm going to make it very, very simple for my purposes, which is basically if you use a cell phone, a signal goes to a tower, and then it comes down to another cell phone. And so that it felt like in our relationships at Ananda, we're not just doing, oh, you and me, and what do you think, and what do I think, but rather we're sending a signal to God, to Guru, and it's coming down to the other person. And so in every relationship, there's always a silent partner, the presence of Guru. And because of that presence, it lifts us, because there's certain signals you can't send through that tower, certain attitudes, certain emotions. Sometimes they slide through, but for the most part, you try to not live on that level, but you try to live on a level that will vibrate with that tower and to send those kind of signals out to everyone. But Swami has very, very much modeled that for all of us, and he's done it in a variety of ways. I'm thinking of one example that happened here many years ago. There was a man who he was a married man, and he fell in love with another woman, and he tried to resist this. And then one day, quite suddenly, he left his wife and went to be with this other woman. And it sent shock ripples through the community. They were all very well known and loved, and people were trying to deal with it. And Swami's way of dealing with that was very soon. My memory is the next day, but I can hardly believe it. And he knew these people very well, so he knew that they could handle this. He invited the two women to his house so that they could cook together in the kitchen to prepare lunch for a large group of people coming. Now think about that. Right away he's saying, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's not deal on the level of being conscribed by my little preferences and my little desires, but let's move to a higher level to what we really share. And when he performed the second marriage for this couple, he right out said to everyone, there's been some feelings around this relationship. And he said, but these things happen. We have to just move on. No judgment. This is just the way life is. People aren't perfect. So let's just keep moving on and doing the best we can with who we are. Davy told a story that has always been very inspiring to me. She talked about a time that she and her husband Jyotish got a letter from someone in the community that didn't like the way they had been directing something. And it hurt their feelings very badly. And when they saw Swami, they tried to hide it from him because it was Christmas, but he noticed it right away. And he said, "What's happening?" And he said, "Well, Swami, we got this letter and we really feel bad about it. And we're really just trying to serve God here. Is the person right? Are we really blowing it?" And Swami just looked at him very kindly and he said, "You're doing the very best you can for who you are." And then Davy said, well, she wanted to push that a little bit farther. And so then she said, "Well, is this person wrong in saying what they said?" And he just said, "He's doing the very best he can for who he is." And then he just smiled and he said, "And I'm doing the very best I can for who I am." And that's kind of the underlying thing that's going on here, is us just trying to learn to be very, very big. I feel, and I know people feel this when they're around Swami, that they are fully seen. That he sees very much the foibles, the idiosyncrasies, to use a kind word, that are sort of like ripples on the surface of the sea. That's all they are, just ripples on the surface of the sea. But underneath it is a vast expansion of God's presence, and that's what he's relating to. In the last chapter of Revelations, he wrote that as he goes through life now, and he says, "I look at people and I see that they're just looking for the same bliss that I am. And they may be not finding it, and they may be having a hard time. And so I talk to Divine Mother about that. And I send them goodwill through her. And I find that I'm feeling life to be a giant symphony, and I'm connected to all of it." I was thinking, just to close, I was thinking about those early days at Ananda, and I thought, I really have it now. The word for those early days at Ananda was aspiration and adventure. And I could think of adventures. We had to trap the porcupine that was eating Asha's trailer. We had to figure out how to print a book. We had to figure out how to dig wells and build houses. And so I thought, well, that's it, aspiration and adventure. And then I thought, wait a minute, how has that changed? It hasn't changed at all. My friend Krishna Das had the adventure of living in a tree house in his first years at Ananda. Now he has the adventure of going to Los Angeles, finding real estate, and raising money for a rent of many thousands of dollars a month. It hasn't changed. The aspiration has gone deeper. The adventure has become more and more exciting. And as Swami said about 40 years, that, I forget the way he said it, 40 years is, but well, what I would like to say is, it's just the beginning. The best is yet to come.